Hi everyone. So I want to talk about the Canadian inflation data that was released this morning. Now, this will be a bit of a longer video than usual because there's a lot to unpack here, and I really want to talk about what's going on and the implications going forward, okay? So, inflation number on a monthly basis came in at plus 0.1% month over month. Now, that was a stronger number than the market was looking for because they were looking for a decrease of 0.1%. Now, on a year over year basis, the number came in at 6.9%. Also, a stronger number than expectations. They were expecting 6.7%, so this number is trending in the wrong direction. Now, looking at last month's number of 7%, it is slightly better. However, the details are not encouraging, so nothing to get excited about. Now, a couple things you're going to look at here and when you're thinking about it, okay? So first of all is core inflation. The Bank of Canada really looks at core inflation, and there's three measures of it that they look for, okay? Now, their target is 1 to 3%. Right now, the average of those three core measures the Bank of Canada looks at is 5.3%. That's the same as it was last month and much too high, at least over 2% higher than the Bank Canada will feel comfortable with, because again, they want it in a 1 to 3% range, okay? So obviously the bank has to continue to be aggressive with their rate hikes. Another thing I looked at in today's data was the breadth of inflation, meaning how widespread is it? Is it concentrated or widespread? Of the basket that they use to calculate inflation, 73% of the basket is experiencing over 4% growth, meaning it is very widespread. It is not concentrated and what they call sticky. These higher prices are sticking around, and these rate hikes right now aren't necessarily helping to move in the right direction. Now, a couple things to think about. Generally speaking, monetary policy, when central banks are hiking rates, there's a big lag effect, typically closer to 18 months, but at least 12 to 18 months, meaning all of these rate hikes right now really shouldn't impact the economy until next year, or closer to next year, because they started this summer. So really into next year, maybe late next year, is really when you're going to see all this monetary policy play out, okay? Now, but what they are doing with this aggressive rate hikes is they're impacting domestic demand. They're impacting consumer spending right now because rates are going up, mortgages are higher, credit card bills are higher, everything's higher. So people are now curbing expenses, okay? So what does this mean going forward? There's two more Bank of Canada meetings this year, October 26th, next week, and December the 7th. Now, over the last 5 meetings, the Bank of Canada has hiked a total of 300 basis points or 3%, okay? Now, going into next meeting, before this morning's inflation data, the markets were expecting a 50 basis point hike. Now, with this stronger inflation, the financial markets are fully pricing in a 75 basis point hike next meeting. Now, within the banks here, within Canada, the 5 major banks, they're almost split. TD and Royal released today that they're expecting 50 basis point hike next week. And the other 3 banks, Scotia, BMO, and CIBC, are all expecting a 75 basis point hike. Regardless, we're going to be probably between 50 and 75 basis points next week, okay? Let's assume they hike by 75 basis points next week. That means this year alone, they would have hiked 3.75% or 375 basis points, taking the overnight Bank of Canada rate to 4%. How much further can they go? Okay, there's more meetings next year, and obviously there'll be one subsequent one this year, December the 7th. However, you have to keep in mind here and think about that. For sure, the central bank is well past the midpoint of their hiking cycle. Meaning, if they do 6 hikes since March, assuming they hike next week, and assuming they hike 75 basis points next week, they would have raised rates this year by 3.75%. They're not going to be going another 3.75% next year, within the next year, whatever, okay? So they are more than halfway, probably more than 3/4 of the way of their interest rate hiking cycle. Now, also, every subsequent hike going forward will be of a smaller magnitude, meaning probably 25 to 50, but a good chance probably 25s, and also not as frequent, meaning they might not have to go every single meeting. Okay, so that's one thing to wrap your head around, because we are more than halfway, probably closer to 3/4 of the way of the hiking cycle. They might have another 1 to 1.5% in them, but they're not going to hike another 3% cumulative. Right now, they have to be very aggressive to get this going. Again, because of the lag effect as well, you're going to start to hear many strategists worrying about, are they going too far too fast? Because similar to leading up to this, how they were very slow to react, which is why we find ourselves in this situation. The same concern goes on the other side, where if they hike too much right now, too fast, what happens next year when all of these rate hikes really makes its way through the economy and trickles down? That can have an issue. Again, there's also a lot of forecasts, and basically it's expected that we're going to be in a recession next year. In a recession, that's a bad thing for the economy. People will be losing jobs. Spending will be down. Yes, that helps the inflationary story because inflation comes down. However, they're not going to be hiking into next year aggressively if we're in a recession. Okay, so the point of this whole analysis is the central bank, if they hike 75 basis points next week, they would have done a cumulative amount of 3.75%, and they would be done more than half and very likely closer to 75% of their hiking cycle, meaning they might have another total of 1.5% or so over however many meetings next year. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. If you have any questions, let me know. This can be a complex topic, but I'm happy to chat with anyone about it whenever you want. So hit me up. Thank you.